All right, here it is, the video where I'm going to have a rant and get pissed off. Narratives. So this is something you can use massively to your favor in MMA betting, but that 90% of people use against them in MMA betting. They don't even let it affect them neutrally. They actually use it to make them less money. But what we're trying to do in this MMA course, in this mentorship, is look at things differently, right? I keep saying it. We're ducking, we're weaving. When everyone's thinking one thing, we're thinking the other thing. Why? Because 90% of people don't profit from MMA, 95, 99. So we're not trying to think like everybody else. So if there's a narrative, most likely we don't think about it because everyone else is thinking about it. That's why it's become a narrative. Narratives are so rife in MMA. That's why I made this guy over here. This guy's sleeping. I know he might not look at it, but this is Zed's, right? You know when you sleep, you go Zed. I don't know why, because when you snore, it doesn't make a Z sound, does it? No, that's not Z. No, I don't know why it said Z, Z, Z. I need to catch some Z's. I don't know what Z means. I don't know why Z is correlated with sleep. But anyway, that's another video for another day, maybe on the personal channel. But basically, narratives just put me to sleep, guys, because narratives are coming from a place of belief, thought. They don't exist in the real realm. Narratives come from a place of where you're just making things up, where you're believing that something might be true. Now, there are certain times where narratives can help you. There are true narratives, but I don't even call them narratives. I just call them something that is true, right? So the worst narrative I always hear is, does the UFC want this fighter to win? Guys, I hate this, man. This puts me to sleep. Everybody on the MMA betting scene on Twitter, on YouTube, or wherever it is, they all say the same shit. Oh, but I think the UFC wants this guy to win. Look, don't give a shit who the UFC wants to win, because there's been many times where the UFC wants someone to win, and they don't win. Do you think they wanted Carlos Ulberg to win against Kennedy and Zechaku? They obviously did. Do you think they wanted Sage Northcutt to win every single fight and go and fight for the title and become welterweight champion? Obviously. Do you think they wanted Paige Van Zandt to win every fight ever? Obviously. What happened? They all got smoked. They all got smoked, every single one of them, right? So I don't really care who the UFC wants to win. I care who I look at in tape and who I pick to win, right? So that means tape and stats above all. Now, obviously, intangibles as well, right? But the intangible can kind of come into a narrative at times. You can kind of get carried away with the intangibles. That's why it's very dangerous, and there's always paradoxical nature to MMA betting. You can get carried away with the intangible, turn it into a narrative, and then ignore the tape and stats. Oh, yeah, the tape's really good. Like, you know, this fighter looks good. Or usually it's the other way. This fighter looks kind of shit. Or this fighter looks average, decent. They're beating bums. Right, they're beating bums, but they don't look anything special. The stats say that they don't really land many strikes per minute. Maybe they don't really land a lot of head strikes. They never throw leg kicks. But the whole narrative is the UFC has flown this guy in from Brazil to fight short notice against someone who they're trying to build up, and they want that guy to win. And then that guy loses, right? Even if the guy looks kind of shit on tape or shit on stats, somehow these people will make a massive narrative about what the UFC wants and completely ignore tape and stats. It's absolutely illogical. It's a logical error, right? So the whole point of this video is basically to tell you not to get wrapped up in narratives. And what narratives are, if you've got this far in the video and you still don't know what a narrative are, then sorry, but it's pretty obvious. If you don't know what a narrative is, I'm sure you would have heard of it before, but basically a narrative is just something that is created by people like media members or people on Twitter or think tanks on Discord or social media, where they create a story up about a fighter, and basically that just becomes gospel and loads of other people start repeating the story. That's what a narrative is. So does the UFC want this fighter to win? That can be a narrative, right? The UFC maybe have this Brazilian fighter, and because they're fighting in Brazil, making their debut on a Brazilian card, and they're from Brazil, and they train with Charles Oliveira, everyone's now saying that, oh, the UFC want this fighter to win. So they've brought their opponent in to lose. You hear that a lot. But then the fight happens, and like complete opposite of what everyone thought happens. So just don't get wrapped up in narratives. Use tape and stats above all. You need to be focusing on your own opinion, as I've written down here, right? Your own opinion. I'm going to start writing bigger as well, because I guess you can see this, but maybe I'll start writing bigger. Your own opinion. Your own opinion. Three exclamation mark, 5 exclamation marks, guys. There's a reason for that, yeah? Because you need to be using your own opinion over any other stupid narrative, right? Now, this is where you can use narratives to your, what's the opposite of detriment? I don't know. Probably you know, but I don't know. Anyway, this is how you can use narratives for you, not against you. So as I've written down here, they can work for you or against you. So narratives are not all bad. Narratives can work for you, but I'm going to tell you how to do it. First, you watch the tape, you do the stats, you make your own opinion, right? Now, if the narrative lines up with tape, stats, and your own opinion, then that gives you extra confidence. Maybe you bet more money on it. Maybe you put more money down. Or maybe you wasn't going to bet on him, but now because everything lines up, now you do a small bet on him, right? Basically, the narrative is going to increase your confidence if everything else lines up. But what I see people doing is they're not very confident in the tape. They ain't very confident in their stats. They don't really have a very confident opinion. But because they hear a narrative, now they make a bet on it. Right? So they've got it backwards. You need to use narrative as the ending, as something you sprinkle on top, like salt or pepper. You need to use it as the condiment, not as the actual meal. Right? What I see people doing is using the narrative as the meal. So they hear the narrative, they're like, oh, great, that's the reason I'm going to bet it. And then they watch tape and stats and they go, oh yeah, he's all right on tape. And they sprinkle the salt and pepper of tape and stats on top. It's the reverse. And as I always say in all of these lessons, guys, we need to be doing things differently than the rest. And so if they're doing things like that, then we're going to do things like this, like I'm teaching you in this lesson. So don't get carried away with narratives, guys. It can make you lose a lot of money. Use narratives for you, not against you.